have to tell you, a lot of times people will say, you know, the lefty blogs will say, Glenn Beck is a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not. I'm a student of history. If you don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, learn history. And you can see it every time. We're back with Neil Ferguson, Damon Vickers, and Brian Doherty. And I want to start here. What gave me this theory was learning the real history of the end of the Soviet Union. The end of the Soviet Union, I think it was Boris Yeltsin, wasn't it? Yeltsin went out, and he went out into the woods, and he met with a lot of the leaders of what's now the Russian Republic, and said, look, this thing's going to collapse. Now, we can do this one of two ways. It can collapse, or we can fundamentally transform it. Went back into their version of Congress and said, you got 1 hour. Debate it. Transform it, or you're going to have blood in the streets. What's it going to be? They decided transform it into the Russian Republic. Well, we look at collapse and say, okay, there's problems. Others also are. And I think that there are those who are looking at what this transforms into. I don't think this language of President Obama, I'm going to fundamentally transform America, I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's a coincidence. I'm wondering if, as there are in Europe with the unions, a lot of it is communist influence, et cetera, deep socialists, or socialists running this republic over in Greece now, they're already making the decisions of what it's going to be, and it's going to be China. It's going to be a China light. I think that's the model that people are going for. Disagree or agree?
No, it's scary to say that. It's scary to say that to America, that the model that the world may choose may ultimately look more like a China-style system. That's a scary thing to say to Americans.
Well, only because they're killing children in rice paddies, and I mean, it's an ugly system.
So, and you make the good point that if you know something is headed a certain way, if you know that you're already on slippery ice, if you know that you've lost the brakes, in those moments that you're heading towards a crash, do you, I don't know, put on rose-colored glasses, look out the window, get involved with conversations with people in the back seat, or do you take control of the wheel and try to do something and try to focus the direction of the vehicle and try to preserve what life you can in the car, which is the world's populations. Where the global governments, the global countries are going to model themselves after economies that are functioning, not after ones that are not functioning. And so that does look a lot like China.
Neil?
The lesson of the Russian experience, I think, is slightly different, Glenn. I think what it tells you is that a very well-intentioned leader who for some people appears to be the solution to their problems can completely wreck a system. Mikhail Gorbachev was the man who broke up the Soviet Union, and the collapse of the Soviet Union 20 years ago happened with incredible speed. Nobody was really expecting his reforms to completely destroy not only the Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe, but the Soviet Union itself. And I worry a little bit about our own situation today. I think we could collapse much more quickly than people assume. I hear debates all the time about the crisis of Social Security or the crisis of the national debt, but it all seems to play out decades away from now, so we can kind of not worry about it now. But I think the lesson of what's going on in Europe today and what happened in Russia 20 years ago is that collapse can sneak up on you and strike very suddenly indeed, no matter how good your intentions are. I want to go back to this question of how do you actually reconnect the politicians to the aspirations of ordinary Americans, because I pin my faith on those. Ordinary Americans fundamentally don't want socialism. They don't even want Keynesianism. They don't want big deficits, and they do want small government. That is still the case, unlike in Europe, unlike in Russia, and certainly unlike in China. The question is why we don't have politicians who can deliver on that, who can actually fulfill that aspiration that ordinary Americans have. I'm hoping, Glenn, that you're going to find us the next Ronald Reagan. Is that why you're out on the West Coast? Are you scouting for actors whose careers are coming to an end?
I wish I could. I tell you,
fancy a try at politics?
I'll tell you. And the next segment, we're going to talk about the hope of America and the hope of the individual, because that's where it comes from. The problem is, you say, why aren't we finding these politicians? Because the politicians have bought into the progressive lie that it doesn't work, that America's system doesn't work. Well, it hasn't worked. You know, you said, Damon, a minute ago, well, they're not going to model themselves after a system that doesn't work. You're darn right. It doesn't work. But we've been modeling ourselves after Europe, and Europe's not working.
We're racing towards it with the health care plans, with the entitlements, with our unionization.
And it's collapsing.
Unions in Portugal, in Spain, in Greece are collapsing the economies along with government, and we can look for our own industries.
And in California, may I add.
Yeah, and it's the same story.
What did the unions do to General Motors, to the airline industry? What has the growth of government in the United States done to the United States, and our bickering back and forth and entitlement spending and pet projects and the way we define GDP? What the heck are we focused on?
Okay. All right. We'll be back in just a second. Neil, I know you've got to run, but I appreciate you being part of the program. Where's the hope come from? Where's the hope come from? Where are the answers? We'll go there next.